Well, good afternoon, everybody. And my name is Gabriel Buck. I'm the Managing Director of GKB Ventures. And I'm very privileged to be asked by GTR to be covering both this session, which is going to be a case study in terms of how a company has been able to innovate and export through a biggest change in the corporate culture of the UK and worldwide. And later on, I'll be doing a separate panel in terms of Brexit and the reality versus the rhetoric. As they say, a crisis is a very good opportunity to review and adjust. And I'm very, very pleased to have here Carl Hunter, who's the chairman, and he will talk through how the company has been able to steer itself into a much stronger entity through this pandemic. So, Carl, please, could you come to the lecture and give us your viewpoint?
Thank you so much for asking me to speak to you today. To deliver this address is a great honour for me. I wish to thank Hannah, Gabby, Elizabeth and Jeff and the wider team of GTR 2021. They're impressive and inspiring representatives of a new British age in global trade. We must be inspired too by the good work of our government. Many of us here today understand the work of government through our specialised prisms. I, however, have had the great honour of seeing it through a number. I've seen some of the greatest strategic thought undertaken in government in 25 years, from the export strategy from the Department for International Trade to the industrial and innovation strategies from the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, the environment strategy from DEFRA, and one you may not know, but Maritime 2050, which is a 30-year strategy and the first British maritime strategy in 400 years from the Department for Transport's Maritime Directorate. At the Department for International Trade, the world is watching this superb department reach out across the world and secure our country's trading future. Our independent sovereign trade voice will be one that is warmly welcomed at the World Trade Organization as we reshape the rules-based international order. I believe that our civil servants are the jewel in our national crown, and as a maritime man, that it is born on a national body whose sailors and seafarers are at its national heart, and that it is a heart that is made of oak still. So to all of you today, I wish you a very good afternoon. In 1945, the UK and the USA created our modern world. Overseas, we created the UN, the IMF, the World Bank, an equal member Commonwealth, and NATO itself. Whilst at home, we created our NHS, our welfare state, and equality for women under the law, all at a time of post-war exhaustion, with a GDP to debt ratio of 250%, and the privations of rationing bread itself for 11 long years. At a time of our greatest national prosperity today then, how dare we presume that we are too busy, lack bandwidth, or imagine that today's problems are too complex for us to shape tomorrow's world. We can, and it is our duty to play our part. This month at the G7 in Cornwall, the UK and the USA revitalised the Atlantic Charter that was its linchpin and set our course to do it all again in a more contested and complex world. It is now time for us to see in ourselves what others overseas see in us, this wondrous, sceptred and special island nation that is England and is our United Kingdom. So let's be inspired by who we are, and let me just list out a few of those. The special relationship with the USA, a lead member of Five Eyes, an economy set to exceed Germany's by 2030. At the heart of 53 members in the Commonwealth, a P5 UN Security Council member, a key leader in Five Powers Defence Agreement in the Indo-Pacific, and, not for my French colleagues this one, more Nobel Prizes for Science at one Cambridge college than the entire nation of France. The fifth largest economy in the world, the second largest exporter of services globally, the fifth largest exporter overall. NATO, we are the second largest defence contributor to it. One of only 5 nations on Earth with SSBN submarines and one of only 6 with SSNs. One of only 2 on Earth with 5th generation aircraft carriers and 5th generation F-35B aircraft on them. One of only 2 nations on Earth able to deploy and sustain via the Royal Fleet Auxiliary naval power 10,000 miles away. In trade, this year, for the first time in 50 years, the combined GDP of the Commonwealth exceeded that of the EU. Whilst the EU accounts for 15% of global trade, if the UK exceeds to CPTPP in Asia, it will account for 16%. In the next 30 years, 90% of all world growth will occur outside the EU. The UK has now rolled over 66 of the 70 EU FTAs that preceded our exit, and the latest UK-Australia Free Trade Agreement is significant not only because it is with a key Commonwealth and Five Eyes partner, but because it enables UK exporters new opportunities to succeed there in what should virtually be a home market for them. We have an exceptional Secretary of State at DIT, a fine ministerial team, and a fabulous and committed team of some of this country's finest civil servants. Together, they have produced one of the world's finest international trade ministries, and to think that it went from a standing start of only 3 people 4 to 5 years ago to the world-class department of 3,000 and nearly 400 international trade advisors today is an example to us all. In the recent integrated review of foreign security and defence policy, trade and finance were now placed at the heart of British foreign policy for the first time in our history. As government seeks to implement this through a whole-of-government approach cross-departmentally in Whitehall, is this not the moment when UK business can join it in a whole-of-economy and whole-of-business effort to succeed in the United Kingdom's national endeavour to succeed globally? If public service can be defined as being about the common good and the elevation of the condition of our people at home and overseas, might that not be an aim which those of us engaged in global trade at this conference can contribute to by the excellence and integrity of us? For values can be exported too. Global trade depends on the sea in its non-digital form, and in the recent Defence Command paper, the Navy succeeded in tri-service terms because they demonstrated, as the First Sea Lord said so well, allows us to exploit the freedom of deployment and manoeuvre that is provided by the world's primary strategic medium of access and exchange, the sea. And on the sea, 96% of everything in this room, everything in your home, comes by it. Admiral Chris Parry, a friend of mine now at Cambridge, once said that the world's oceans are the world's superhighway, to which I would add that if you compare and contrast a map of today's undersea network of cables that enable our internet today, they mirror remarkably closely the shipping lanes of the 18th century and the reason that the United Kingdom is at the heart of both. And, interesting fact, the reason that the United Kingdom is the second largest concentration of data centers outside America. But in the integrated review, the Royal Navy also demonstrated the need for technological and scientific shift, matching the government's aim to make the United Kingdom a science superpower. A science superpower. The following statement by our First Sea Lord, Admiral Tony Radakin, caught my attention when he said, "We intend to apply the mantra of faster, cheaper and better, delivering minimum viable products in 6 to 9 months rather than 6 to 9 years. There is an equivalence in our company at Coltraco and for UK business overall, and which we call it in my company being better, faster, cheaper in our company as the underlying principle of our resilience, diversification, growth strategy overall. There is therefore a remarkable correlation between the words of the First Sea Lord and ours, and I will shortly talk of that in more detail. Before I do, I just remind you of the words of Admiral Nick Hine, our second Sea Lord, who reflects so much of the transformation that is occurring during COVID-19. He said, "We must push the boundaries, be humble enough to get it wrong, embrace technology, and innovate across every area of the Royal Navy's business in operations in order to fight and to win." So let us see our future in global trade as the moment in which UK business and UK exporting can also win, and see those victories as inseparable from the sea that enables that global trade. So here is our story, Gabby, of COVID-19. Firstly, let us define a company. To me, having studied hundreds of others waiting for aircraft as I travel the world, I've settled on this one, that it is merely the sum of the individuals within it. And my role as the owner of that company is to create a happy and dynamic environment for those individuals so as to create a sustainable and profitable company, but also to generate and maintain hope in a bright future. The 11th of March 2020 is indelibly written on my mind, for on that day we lost 50% of our global markets. We didn't have sufficient funds to weather a prolonged downturn. Our R&D program was a long rather than short-term one, and our primary market sectors had collapsed. But we had a fine team of committed individuals and ones who would dig in, listen to messages of hope, and attack the problems, just as all of us must do in our period of economic recovery post-COVID. In the next 5 months of this year, my company, Coltraco Ultrasonics, will be bringing to production 18 new instruments and systems and exporting them to 120 countries. Last year, we sat as one of 30 businesses on the government's Economic Recovery Task Force. Yet on the 11th of March 2020, we lost 50% of our customer markets. What follows is the story of how we pivoted in light of the pandemic, ensured survival, and then adapted to thrive through adversity. We believe that the measures taken by our business might prove to be a blueprint that the UK government can learn from and support other British businesses in the post-COVID-19 economic recovery phase, and the challenges faced by exporter innovator businesses must be addressed by the UK government if it is to meet its ambitions in support of exports and innovation. Coltraco Ultrasonics is a world-leading manufacturer of technology to monitor specialist things such as the watertight integrity and the fire safety against liquefied pressurized gases on ships and other marine structures, including offshore renewable wind turbines. Our advanced technology is also used on land to monitor systems that protect safety and critical national infrastructure, such as data centers, telecommunications, power stations, electricity and gas distribution companies. I'm very proud to say that we export 89% of our output to 120 countries, and Asia Pacific accounts for 40% of our exports overall. And in 2019, we were honored to receive the Queen's Award for Enterprise and International Trade, which is quite a special one because that is for 6 years of continuous growth in exporting and innovation. Science and the application of fundamental physical principles, therefore, are understandably at our core, as is our central commercial ability to sell well in domestic and export markets concurrently and to be better, faster, cheaper in all that we do globally. As I mentioned, on the 11th of March 2020, we lost our oil and gas sector overnight because of the oil price drop, and we lost 50% of the shipping market as the wet fleet that was carrying that cheap oil was doing okay, whilst the dry fleet that was moving commodities to Asia were in dramatic decline given COVID-19. We decided there and then that our exposure to our primary markets in marine and offshore had to change, and that somehow we had to become a multi-sectoral company across 25 market sectors globally very quickly. And to do that, we had to develop a new and broader technology range to add to the specialized ones that we were distinguished in global markets. To do that, we had to break out, I use a military expression there, break out from our specialized fields and rapidly innovate new core technologies, all those that were in embryonic research states, which would have a greater place in more general market sectors alongside our specialized primary ones. The new company strategy was developed within 30 days and called our Resilience, Diversification, Growth Strategy. And it was underpinned by the fundamental principle of becoming better, faster, cheaper across our global markets, including Asia. We reconfigured our research and development plan, slimming it down to accelerate to production new products and systems with the aim to become the global leader in both our specialized fields and our new ones, And we reconfigured the company by creating new departments and obviously new heads of departments, probably years before they would have been promoted in other times. Those new processes and new organization were only possible because of one thing. And if I take you back to the definition of a company being the sum of the individuals within it, it is because we were very fortunate that we were populated with probably the highest density of those with drive and determination that I've seen in any organization I've been with in my adult life. In our distribution plan, for instance, we created a multi-sectoral global distribution network of exclusively appointed distributors, and we're working to create a network of 200 of them by September 2021 and another 200 by April 22, aiming to cover approximately 1,000 individual market sectors across our top 35 country markets overseas, set alongside the ability to be better, faster, and cheaper than competitors globally. Our ability to adapt saw us win a British government COVID-19 Emergency Technology Development Fund award in June 2020. It requested us to develop an instrument so that NHS hospital staff could prevent infection contagion to the rest of a hospital from a negatively pressurized ICU ward. In doing so, we harnessed our existing maritime expertise in fluid dynamics to apply them in airflow and enter new medical and indeed built environment markets, since people who return to work must return safely, and in large commercial buildings, the only way that you can ensure adequate ventilation to generate pathogen-free air is if you can first establish that the building is airtight first. So out of that COVID, and because we were supported by government, we've produced two technologies that nobody else has in the world, and I'm proud to say that this was completed in 28 weeks, and we are now exporting the first of those units. On that day then last year, we began a process to ensure survival in light of the pandemic. It took us 60 days to change, and we planned out for an economic recovery assumption to December 2022. The first thing I did as chairman was to circulate a note to the company to guarantee their salaries no matter what was about to happen, and hopefully injecting staff confidence and stability. We offered soft loans to those families in our company who were in distress, and we put in place a 5-phase plan, and we're currently in phase 4 of that, which we call the integration phase. It's a 2-month period by which we implement all the lessons and processes learned in phases 1 to 3, and we accelerate progress and growth in our product range and our exporting too. We increased the rate of production so that we could supply quickly on demand, and watch suppliers we have known for over 30 years continue and often grow when they didn't go into furlough, while some second or third tier suppliers who did go into furlough face issues. Since 11th of March 2020 as a business, I can state with great pride that we have never entered furlough. We have increased sales, we have increased salaries, we have enabled salary bonuses for special achievements to the team, we have employed more people, and we've restructured our organization at home and overseas, created new departments, and cut non-core expenditure. Alongside those, we've created new processes in research and development, sales, distribution, strategic engagement, production, inventory control, which has seen us design and manufacture in 28 weeks the world's first hospital intensive care ward technology to contain COVID-19 contagion in negatively pressurized ICU wards, and the world's first instrument to ensure that people can return to large commercial buildings safely by ensuring that that building is airtight and can generate clean, pathogen-free, ventilated air. We've developed new technologies in 1/5 of the time that we ever had before. We've rapidly moved new technologies to production in 6 to 9 months. We increased stock by 200%. We reduced by 50% our payment times to suppliers who supported us. And we increased our buying prices to key strategic suppliers voluntarily by 15%. We moved from 2 to 3 customer market sectors to 25, established a new exclusive global distribution network and a department to run it, developed our global strategic partner network from 2 to 17, and tripled our after-sales revenue as a consequence of the higher value products that we were bringing to production more quickly. Finally, we won British Government Emergency COVID-19 Technology Awards and created 8 new global service stations. How did we achieve that? A bit of a mouthful coming up, but we achieved it by mastering a 6-step innovation feedback loop, which I call our science, research and development, innovation, manufacturing, certification, commercialization loop principle. And only when a new innovation idea ticked each of those 6 boxes would it move into the overall R&D and production and transition to production plan. But what I was doing wasn't new. We were doing the same thing that occurred in England in 1760 in the first industrial revolution, when science was applied to manufacture and when domestic demand was created alongside global demand, and which we are doing in our company today. For any company seeking to innovate and export, mastering this feedback loop is essential. I would say that whilst we are very lucky to have scientific resource in our company, of the 5 million British SMEs that don't and wish to innovate and export, such luxuries are not common. And if the government, which I warmly support, wishes to increase innovation and therefore exporting, thought might be given as to how it could incentivize innovation and exporting more for them. Next month, I'm proud to say that we are opening our laboratory at Durham. It will be co-located with the Centre for Advanced Instrumentation at the Department of Physics at the University of Durham. I cannot speak more highly of Professors Chadwick and Halliday there, or of the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Stuart Corbridge, and his exceptional team, including Lauren Bradshaw and Andrew Harston. Durham, as the Vice-Chancellor so accurately says, inspires the extraordinary. For years, I've wanted to create our ideas factory. I'm proud to announce, therefore, that we recently achieved the Senate of Durham University's approval to create the Durham Institute of Research, Development and Invention. This aims to break away from the research grants system which constrains scientific brilliance by its focus on others' specific interest. We, on the other hand, aim to combine Newtonian discovery with Edisonian commercialization so that our scientists can undertake unfettered scientific research along the Newton model and to understand further the fundamental physical laws of the universe, which to me God created and generates scholarship for humankind. In closing, within that institute, we will create the Centre for Underwater Acoustic Analysis for the Royal Navy and US Navy, with a potential emphasis on how sound behaves under deep pressure and the polar regions under the ice caps. So you see, from crisis can come renewal. I believe that this moment post-COVID-19 is our United Kingdom's moment to renew British leadership in a world that has never needed British values more. Be inspired, therefore, by our collective desire to humankind's understanding of its fundamental physical laws. Let us inspire ourselves, for we are extraordinary in this country. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you well in your own recovery.
Thank you, Carl. We're really running out of time. I've got 2 key questions which I would like to pick up on with you, and it picks up some of the questions that have come through the audience. The first is that, my sense is that, 11th of March 2020 is firmly etched in your brain.
It is.
And what I find quite striking and very encouraging is that you are, in essence, a very successful family-run business. And my question is, how important was that in being able to effect the change in the 60 days that you were able to do that? And on the flip side of that, do you think that large public companies would lose out from that ability to react and instigate change in the speed that you've done?
Well, it's a really brilliant question, Gabby, so thank you. I think the first thing I'd say is that, we talk a lot about the importance of family, but ultimately it is the only thing that is the fundamental building block of any decent society, in whatever form that family takes form, by the way. And therefore, if you are from a strong family, as I am, and I'm a very proud father of 4, I think that enables you to reach out to other people with families in your company, and that they are, once they realize that the values that you have from your own family are ones that you're sharing with non-family members, and that you're able to articulate a vision of certainty for both, then I think you're onto something. I'm less well qualified to talk about the large corporates by definition, although I have worked with some of the largest in the world, like United Airlines and others. All I would say is that instead of those family values, what you then have to rely on is inspirational leadership underpinned by genuine vision and genuine capability. And without all of those three things, and most do contain some without all three, then they will be fundamentally flawed at times of crisis.
Okay, and maybe taking the other extreme in terms of, from a family business to a large corporate and now dealing with governments. One of the things that you mentioned is that you are very clear in seeking out from government extra support in terms of innovation, and extra support in terms of helping companies, whether they're large, medium or small, to be exporting more. And through innovation, through exporting, it's encouraging. The key question, and picking up something that's from here, what would you expect or look to get from UK government to help in terms of innovation and help in terms of support to get companies to be out there to export more?
I think you'll get more by giving first. So I don't mean to be pedantic, but we talked about this before. I genuinely believe that those companies that work best with government are those that seek to understand it and can articulate their position from a public interest perspective rather than a self-interested private one. And that's quite difficult to craft that environment. But when you do it, that's when you create your Barnes-Wallis moment. The bouncing bomb, after all, was created by a military need, but actually delivered by us as civilian scientists, and by the military and our labs and our industry all collaborating together with a certain aim, which we desired, called victory. And I know that sounds dreadfully old-fashioned, but that is exactly what you have to, in my opinion, that is what you have to, how you have to comport yourself now, which is why I think the Second Sea Lord's point about fighting and winning are a language that is appropriate in a competitive world, as long as you're doing it by your underlying values, which should be decent ones.
But do you think, if I may push you on this, do you think that collaboration is currently going on in a manner that you would feel comfortable for the future of exporting?
I know exactly what you're trying to say. And of course, it's not perfect. But what you have seen in the last year is the greatest government business collaborative effort, although I would suggest that it's been more from government to business than the other way around, although there have been heroic examples of engineering companies on things like the vaccine, the vaccine program indeed, but also the ventilator program. If you cast your mind back a year, we were one of those companies that volunteered to make those parts as well. So I think that this, if we use this moment, then the future potential exists to create what you quite rightly desire, and I share. But we're not quite there yet.
Okay. Carl, thank you very much for your time and for your insight. And I will be monitoring with greater enthusiasm in terms of how your business goes forward. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Gabby. Very good.